Welcome to Secret Story. This is the story of an experience I had years ago. I've never told anyone because it would have caused a lot of problems for various people if those various people ever found out. The names are changed, and the dialogue is paraphrased, but I remember most of this like it was yesterday, so it is fairly accurate to the way things happened. My name is Rob. In 1983 I was 27 years old with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a distance runner's slim build, 6 feet, 165 pounds. I married a girl named Jill. She was an attractive, outgoing 25-year-old, 5 feet 7 inches, slim, brown hair, big brown eyes. She was a knockout and she knew it. The marriage was a mistake from the start and almost everyone knew it but me. It started going downhill after a year or so, and after about 2 years I found out she was screwing some guy at her office, and that was pretty much the end of it. She moved out of the house and I was always grateful for that because I would have been the type to stick it out as long as I could have, and things could have gotten much more complicated. We had no kids and our only asset to fight over was the house, which was decided I would keep and pay her for her share. It would be a rather smooth divorce. Once she left and the word got out about our separation, friends started calling to check on me and offer support. I got calls from old friends, several of our mutual friends, and even 2 of Jill's childhood friends. Just about everyone who called agreed on one thing: Jill was an idiot. A few weeks after she left, Jill's mother called. Sandy was in her early 50s. She had been divorced from Jill's father for years and was remarried to a man named Rick. She was attractive like her daughter, blonde, about the same height, slim, with the same brown eyes. She had a body that she'd definitely taken care of. We had always gotten along fine, and from the beginning Sandy had insisted that I call her by her first name. Jill and I would visit her mother's house on holidays and go with Sandy to her condo at the beach. We could always talk easily, our relationship always warm, proper and respectful. The phone call was pretty much like the others I'd received from everyone else: how are you feeling? How is your family, are you alright, etc. She told me how sorry she was, and talked about Jill, how she doesn't know what she's doing, she is confused, blah blah, blah. We talked about 10 minutes, I thanked her for calling and we hung up. A month or so later she called me again. It started the same way as the previous call, asking how I was doing, how is the family, things like that. Then she changed the direction of conversation and caught me a little by surprise. Have you been seeing anyone? She asked. I hesitated briefly and replied, oh, not really. I had actually been seeing 2 different women since right after Jill left, but my lawyer had told me that if I started seeing anyone to be discreet until the divorce was settled. Oh come on, Rob, you can tell me. I know your marriage is definitely over. I'm not telling anyone, especially not Jill. I feel terrible she left you in the first place. I just care about you and I want to see you move on, you deserve better. So tell me, are you seeing anyone? Well, yeah, I am. I trusted her. Okay, good. Now what's her name? Actually, I've been seeing a couple different women, I replied. Ooh, now we're getting somewhere, Sandy said. I chuckled at this, loosening up a little. So what are their names and how did you meet? Well, one is named Denise, I met her through work. The other is Jerry, and I met her through the baseball league. I coached her son on the all-star team. Sandy sounded surprised. You coached teenagers, she must be somewhat older than you. Yeah, she is. Well, they both are. Really? How old are they? Denise is 36, Jerry is 41. Wow, Rob, I didn't know you liked that older. Sandy said. This surprised me. I had never heard her talk like that. This loosened me up some more. I laughed and said, well, they're not complaining about having that younger. We both laughed. She responded, that must keep you busy on the weekends, juggling both of them. Oh, not really, just depends. They have kids to keep them busy, I said. Much of the time our plans are just spur of the moment. There was an awkward silence for a few beats before Sandy continued. Rob, let me ask you a question. Do you have plans this Saturday night? Not yet, I replied. Listen. I'm going down to the beach condo this weekend. I'm going down Friday night to check on the place and I'm staying to attend a condo association meeting on Monday night. Why don't you drive down on Saturday afternoon? I'll take you out to dinner and we can talk. I'd love to catch up and hear all about your business and all of these women you are seeing. I mumbled something and she cut me off. Don't worry, no one else will be there, just me. You know I wouldn't pull anything like that. It's just that after all that's happened it would be nice to see you again instead of everything ending on a sour note. What do you say? What time were you thinking? Come down late afternoon, 3 or 4 o'clock. We can have a couple drinks, chat and then walk across the street for dinner. She was referring to a favorite seafood house about a block from her condo. Well, okay, figure on me getting there around 4. But you don't have to pay for dinner. I invited you, so I'm paying. I'm looking forward to it. So I'll see you around 4. I agreed that 4 o'clock was good. We said goodbye, and I hung up shaking my head. It struck me that now that her daughter and I were divorcing, she wouldn't be my mother-in-law much longer. And the conversation we just finished had moved past mother-in-law/son-in-law territory. On Saturday I had to leave at around 2:30 to get to the condo by 4 o'clock. Sandy lived in the city about 3 hours from the beach and my house was about midpoint between the two. I showered, put on some jeans and a light blue shirt with running shoes all over it that she'd given me the previous Christmas. Traffic was light. It was late fall so beach traffic was minimal. I arrived at Sandy's condo right at 4 o'clock. Her building was the type where the parking was on ground level under the building and the units started on the second floor. Being off-season there were only a few cars. I pulled in next to her blue Volvo that I walked up 2 flights of stairs and over to her door. I hesitated and took a breath. I felt like through that door would be another dimension. I could feel on the phone earlier in the week that Sandy and I had reached a new level of communication. I felt from her a sincerity and trust that I never had with her daughter. It was a good feeling, but still awkward. I didn't know what to expect. I knocked on her door, the door swung open and there she was, more beautiful than ever. Her blonde hair was longer than before. It hung past her shoulders and was parted in the middle with a new added frizz. She had on sleek black pants and a soft tan sweater. Well, what a surprise. Rob's on time. She joked that I said, that's because I don't have Jill with me. We laughed and she ushered me in. We hugged and she kissed me on the cheek as always. Come on in, sit down. I was about to pour a glass of wine. What would you like, a beer? Beer's fine. I walked over to the glass doors and looked out at the Atlantic Ocean. The sun was lower now and blocked by the high rises so the beach was in gray twilight. Sandy walked up beside me and handed me my beer. You'll never get tired of this view, I said. Then I turned to her and added, I like your hair. Do you? Oh, thank you. I thought I'd grow it out for the winter and see how it looked. Well, come have a seat. Let's catch up. And I promise, no Jill. We sat on the sofa facing the glass doors and the ocean beyond and we talked for 2 hours and 3 drinks. We talked about lots of things. She asked about my family, my business, and my hobbies. She told me about her job as an instructor of nursing, about Rick's job as a plant manager, about Rick's endless list of projects around the house. We talked and laughed about many things, but we didn't mention Jill, and she didn't ask about my girlfriends. A little after 6 we left to go to dinner. It was cool out, but the restaurant wasn't far away so we didn't wear jackets. We had to walk a block to the highway then cross to the other side. When a break in traffic occurred she grabbed my hand and called, "Let's go, run." And we scooted across the road hand in hand. That was a first. As we entered the restaurant she was a couple strides ahead of me. We were seated promptly in a cozy corner booth. We ordered another wine and beer, and when the drinks arrived Sandy proposed a toast to my future success and happiness, and then I toasted her with something just as lame. After a couple minutes of chit-chat and looking at the menu we had both seen dozens of times, she finally got around to what I knew was coming. "So," Sandy said softly. "Tell me about these older women you're wow." Another word I'd never heard her use. Wonder what other colorful words she has in her vocabulary. Again I was caught off guard. I smiled and shook my head. "Oh come on, for God's sake. I may be your mother-in-law, but I'm not a prude. You started to tell me about these women the other night, so don't tease me. Tell me the rest. You might as well go all the way." There she goes again. She had this thing she would sometimes do with her left eye, a flicker or a half wink, that she would do when she was sharing a joke or a secret with somebody. And she did it then when she said "go all the way." I smiled at her wordplay and looked down at the table. She may have thought I was blushing, but I wasn't. I just felt uneasy because I was sitting across from my still mother-in-law having this conversation, and I had just realized I looked up at her face, a foxy, mature replica of Jill's. I stared into her piercing brown eyes and they stared right back. "All right," I said. "I'll go all the way. I just hope I don't come prematurely." She burst out laughing, then covered her mouth and turned red when some people at a nearby table looked over. She continued laughing quietly and I grinned as her eyes bore into mine. Fortunately, the waitress came and took our orders. "Well," she said after a few moments that I sipped my beer. "Where do you want me to start?" "Start with the baseball mom. What's her name?" "Jerry." "Jerry. How old is Jerry?" 40 or 41, maybe 42. She told me she got married at 19 and she has a 21-year-old daughter, I'm just not sure of the time frame. And her son is? He'll be 16 next month. "So," Sandy said, sipping wine. "Tell me all about Jerry." "Not much to tell. She's divorced twice with 2 older kids. They live in a little old house a few blocks from mine. She was a very active mom in the league. She would come to all the games dressed in shorts and tank tops and drive the coaches and umpires crazy." "Does she have a good body?" "Oh, yeah," I said with emphasis. "How did you start seeing her?" "I just rode my bicycle over past her house a few times until I saw her and started talking. I told her what happened. I knew she kind of liked me, I just didn't know what to expect. We went on a couple of bike rides, and then I asked her out. We went out few times, enjoyed ourselves. Nothing too crazy. A movie, a dance, a party, normal stuff." "How's the?" she questioned. There it was. "Okay," I said. "Just okay?" Sandy asked. "Well, it's fine but it's pretty straightforward." I excused myself to go to the bathroom and when I returned our dinners were being served. After everything was in place Sandy started right in. "Okay, enough of Jerry. Tell me about the other girl. Tell me how you met her." Chuckling, I replied, "Denise. I've known her for a few months. We worked together, and there was chemistry between us from the start but we ignored it because we were both married. When we found out we were both separated and getting divorced, it didn't take long. She's 36 and has a 12-year-old daughter who splits time between her place and the father's, so I only get together with her on Thursday nights and every other weekend. This weekend the girl is with her. I guess I chose the right week to call," she said with that eye flick again. "What does she look like?" "She's attractive. 5'5", short brown hair, green eyes, slim body." I leaned over, looked at Sandy and said softly, "Ooh, do tell." "Well, she's not shy, I'll tell you that. She came over to my house one day last week to pick up some papers for work. She came inside and she said, 'I don't have much time.' We did it standing up leaning against the back of the sofa in my living room. Then she straightened herself up, picked up the papers, goodbye, and left. She was gone in less than 15 minutes. How does she like it? I paused and thought about it. She's liked everything so far. Sandy was getting into this conversation, I could see. She said in a low voice, giving or receiving? Well, she likes both. Sandy looked away briefly and seemed to shiver. She sipped some water, and then grabbed her purse. Excuse me a minute. I need to go to the ladies' room. As she ran off, I wondered if I'd gone over the line, said something wrong. I ate the last few bites of my dinner and then she returned and slid into her seat. Are you finished? Sandy asked. Yes, are you? She hadn't eaten that much. She took 2 more quick bites and said, now I am. Let's go. She looked at the chit and laid down the cash to cover it plus a healthy tip. We stood up and she started for the door. I once again admired her appearance from the rear that we walked outside of the restaurant and waited to cross the highway. I started to feel the inept uneasiness that comes right before a moment of truth. Things had been going along pretty well with my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law, but then it all fell flat. We had never really discussed whether I would sleep here or drive home. I had my overnight bag in the car, but I didn't know what to do and I only had a 1-block walk to figure it out. That it was later now, so the traffic was lighter and we walked across the highway. We didn't say much for a moment or two, but once we were on the other side of the road and walking back to the condo, I started talking. I thanked her for dinner, and I told her how great it was to see her again, and I kept babbling. All too soon we arrived at the base of the condo. Sandy was to my right and grabbed my right arm with her left hand and turned me toward her. She said, Rob, will you do me a favor? Of course. What? Kiss me. I looked in her eyes for a second or two without saying anything and she said it again with emphasis. Kiss me. I stared in her big brown eyes. She still had a grip on my arm as I moved my face toward hers. Her right arm went to the back of my head and pulled me to her. It was a long. We parted briefly and our eyes met. Finally she backed off and said, come upstairs. Always the punster. I said, I'm surprised I haven't come already. She smiled at that, gave me a peck on the lips and said it won't be long. She smiled up at me, took my arm and led me up the stairs. Once inside her condominium and the door closed behind us, we immediately embraced. I'll do what you want, I gasped. Really? No shit. I envied that girl. We started in a slow rhythm but it soon increased. I collapsed beside Sandy, quaking. I want you to relax, Sandy said to me. After a minute or two she stopped. Said, how do you like it so far? Christ, I've never felt anything like that in my life. What a turn on. Well, it's going to get even better. You just have to do one thing, okay? Will you do that? I nodded and she went back to work. I going to come, I said. Sandy's head settled on my shoulder. We laid there for a minute in each other's arms. She didn't say anything. Wow, I began. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Did you like that? She said. Like it? I never felt anything like it in my life. It was unbelievable. What is that, the Sandy special? Sandy smiled, shrugged and said. Sure, you can call it that. I'm glad it was good for you. I enjoyed it too. I looked forward to it all week. You did? How do you mean? Well, I've been thinking about you since Tuesday night when we spoke on the phone. I wasn't sure if you'd accept my invitation to go to dinner tonight. I was nervous about asking you and I was happy when you said yes. And even after you accepted, I had no idea whether we'd end up in. I was hoping we would, but I didn't know how things would go once you got here. But I wanted to be prepared in case it did happen. And if it did happen, I wanted it to be the greatest night ever, a night we wouldn't forget. So I practiced. Well, you've succeeded, this is the most amazing. I started and then I caught myself. You practiced? What do you mean? Sandy laughed and looked up into my face. On the phone, when you told me you were seeing 2 older women. I decided that night on a practice plan. Sandy giggled and added, "You sure you want to hear this?" "You can't stop now," I said. "No secrets now. Tell me about your practice plan." She cleared her throat and said, "Okay. Cucumbers. Cucumbers." She laughed again. Well, the next day I went to the market. I stopped at the school supplies shelf, took a plastic ruler off the rack and put it in the baby seat of the shopping cart. Then I went over to the produce section and started measuring cucumbers. I picked out 4 8-inchers and bagged them up. I've been working out with them ever since. "Working out," I said. "Yes." I chuckled and looked into those brown eyes. "So, tell me about these workouts," I said. "For 4 days. With my mouth I'd practice in front of a mirror so I could see how much I was taking in. That took some practice. I feel like a vegetarian." "Are you kidding me? You did it here?" I asked. "Right here," she replied. She said, "You want to smell it?" I nodded and said softly, "Show me your workout." She was getting into it. "You really want to see it? Okay. Wait." She popped up off the bed and into the bathroom. She turned on the tap, took a drink of water and came back and sat on the bed facing me. "Sorry," she said, "Okay, here goes." "I hope I can do it." Sandy seemed to take a deep breath. "What do you think?" "I think you are a very disciplined woman," I said. "Practicing like that." "Oh, shut up, you want to see more?" "Well, of course, but I'm getting hard." In the morning I awoke as Sandy came out of the bathroom. She noticed immediately. Reached for it and stated, "Well, somebody's happy this morning." I said, thinking about that Sandy special. I wanted to prolong this moment, so I slowed down, and I eased back into a nice slow groove. Sandy looked up at me with a concerned look on her face. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing. Everything is perfect." I paused. "Tell me what you want me to do." "You know what to do. I don't want to hurt you." We lay back, exhausted. "Phew," she said. "You are incredible," I said. "I can't believe we did that." "But we did. You were amazing." We parted and I said, "I'm your backdoor man." She kissed me again and replied, "I'm glad I left the door unlocked." We decided we would shower. And then I'd take her out to brunch. One nice thing about that condo was that it had a really large shower, so there was plenty of room for both of us. "I think it's time I washed this, don't you?" I took Sandy to brunch and it was a very relaxed and pleasant time. We had a nice table overlooking the ocean. But over the course of the meal I think we both could feel the vibe changing because we both knew the end was near. That I drove her back to her condo. There were only a few cars in the lot, but I parked the car a few spaces away for a little privacy for our goodbyes. I put the gearshift in park that we both turned toward each other. "Rob, thank you so much for she said. "No, thank you. It was incredible." "You were incredible." We parted and Sandy looked into my eyes. "No one can ever find out about this," she said. That I replied, "No one would ever believe it." I started to say something but she hushed me. "But you know what? I don't regret any of it," she said. Then she was out of the car and she walked over to the building, up the stairs, and disappeared without looking back. 2 days later I arrived home from work and there was a brown paper sack on my front porch with my name written on it. I unlocked the door and went into the kitchen. I put my briefcase on the floor and the bag on the table. Inside the bag was a gift-wrapped package and handwritten note. I read the note first. "I stopped by on the way home from the beach but missed you. I was going to give you the special but I guess it was not to be. Maybe next time. I'm leaving you a small gift as a memento. Take care." I never saw Sandy, or ever spoke to her again. She was left with just a memory, but she left me with more than that.